Greetings, cozy knights. Lower your swords and rest by the fire. Tonight, we delve into Elden Ring's most carefully hidden Easter eggs, from subtle nods to berserk, to secrets buried in the game's very code. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're listening from tonight, and what games you want me to cover next, and subscribe if this helps you sleep. The Moonlight Greatsword's latest form, From Software, has included their signature Moonlight Greatsword in nearly every game they've created since King's Field in 1994, and Elden Ring continues this beloved tradition. In the lands between, this legendary blade appears as the Dark Moon Greatsword, obtained by completing Ranni the Witch's extensive questline. The weapon maintains its iconic blue glow when the weapon art is activated, creating that familiar moonlight aura that fans have treasured for decades. What makes this iteration special is how it ties into Ranni's Dark Moon sorceries, transforming a simple callback into an integral part of the game's lore. The sword's presence represents more than nostalgia. It serves as a through line connecting decades of From Software games, a secret handshake between the developers and longtime fans, who recognize this blade's significance across multiple universes and timelines. Patches returns once again. The conniving merchant has appeared in almost every From Software game since Demon's Souls, and true to form, he shows up in Elden Ring to continue his legacy of betrayal. You'll first encounter him in Murkwater Cave in Limgrave, where he ambushes you as a boss fight before surrendering and begging for mercy when his health drops low enough. This cowardly surrender is classic Patch's behavior, repeated across multiple game universes, but the Easter egg runs deeper than his mere presence. If you spare Patches and progress far enough in the game, you can summon him to help fight Radahn during the festival. True to his nature, Patches will run away almost immediately after being summoned, refusing to engage with the legendary demigod. This moment perfectly captures his character while providing a hilarious callback to his cowardice in previous titles. The developers even gave him new dialogue about how fighting Radahn is above his pay grade, acknowledging the absurdity of this merchant even being at such an epic battle. The Grafted Blades Game of Thrones connection. George R.R. Martin collaborated with From Software on Elden Ring's lore, so it's only fitting that the game contains a direct reference to his most famous work. The Grafted Blade Greatsword, found in Castle Morn on the Weeping Peninsula, looks remarkably similar to the Iron Throne from Game of Thrones. This massive weapon is literally composed of multiple swords melded together into one enormous blade, mirroring how the Iron Throne was forged from the swords of defeated enemies. The weapon description even mentions it being made from dozens of blades, further emphasizing this connection. Beyond the visual similarity, the grafted blade serves as a symbol of conquest and dominion, much like the Iron Throne itself. It's a weapon that embodies the very concept of claiming power through the defeat of others, making it a thematically perfect tribute to Martin's creation. Finding this weapon early in the game feels like discovering a hidden signature from one of the game's creators. Alexander's Siegmeyer parallels Alexander, the warrior jar, serves as a clear homage to Siegmeyer of Katarina from Dark Souls. Both characters constantly find themselves stuck in precarious situations and require the player's help to escape. Alexander first appears stuck in the ground near Saintsbridge in Limgrave, needing you to hit him from behind to break him free. Later, you'll find him stuck again in a different location, repeating this pattern. This mirrors Siegmeyer's tendency to get stuck in various situations throughout Dark Souls. The parallel extends to their ultimate fates as well. Both characters are honorable warriors who meet tragic ends, with Alexander requesting a duel to the death in the mountaintops of the Giants, much like Siegmeyer's storyline concluding with his death in Ash Lake. The reward for defeating Alexander, the Shard of Alexander, enhances weapon skills, making it a powerful item that memorializes his warrior spirit. Even Alexander's dialogue patterns and cheerful demeanor echo Siegmeyer, creating a touching tribute to one of Dark Souls' most beloved characters. The Pursuer's spiritual successor, the Black Knife assassins scattered throughout Elden Ring function similarly to the Pursuer from Dark Souls 2, appearing in unexpected locations to ambush players. These mysterious enemies show up in multiple areas across the lands between, never truly defeated despite how many times you kill them. One particularly notable Easter egg involves the Black Knife assassin hiding in the rafters of the Black Knife catacombs, dropping down when you least expect it. This ambush mirrors the Pursuer's tendency to appear in seemingly safe areas. The assassins even use similar hit-and-run tactics, disappearing and reappearing to keep players on edge. Their presence creates that same sense of dread the Pursuer generated, making players constantly watch their surroundings even in areas that should be safe. The developers clearly understood what made the Pursuer memorable and translated that concept into multiple recurring mini-bosses, rather than a single stalking enemy. Velka's statue returns. Sharp-eyed players who explore Dark Souls thoroughly will recognize certain statue designs scattered throughout Elden Ring that bear striking resemblance to statues of Velka, the goddess of sin. These statues appear in various locations, particularly in churches and ruins throughout the lands between. While never explicitly identified as Velka, the visual similarity is unmistakable, from the hooded figure's posture to the flowing robes, and the way the statues are positioned in locations associated with judgment and penance. This subtle callback rewards players familiar with Dark Souls' deeper lore, while remaining mysterious enough that new players won't feel left out. The statues serve as environmental storytelling, suggesting that concepts of sin, judgment, and redemption exist in the lands between just as they did in Lordran. Some fans theorize these statues represent a parallel deity in Elden Ring's world, while others believe From Software included them as pure homage to their earlier work. The Bed of Chaos flame pattern. The Flame of Frenzy and its associated incantations display visual effects remarkably similar to the chaotic orange flames from the Bed of Chaos fight in Dark Souls. When you embrace the three fingers and receive the frenzied flame, your eyes burn with this distinctive orange chaos fire, creating the exact color palette and visual style that characterized one of Dark Souls' most infamous boss encounters. The similarity extends beyond mere color scheme. The way the flames flicker and spread, the wild, uncontrolled nature of their movement, and even the sound design all echo the Bed of Chaos. This connection makes thematic sense as well, since both the Bed of Chaos and the Frenzied Flame represent destructive forces seeking to burn away the existing order and return everything to primordial chaos. By using similar visual language, From Software links these two chaotic forces across different game universes, suggesting they represent the same fundamental concept in different mythologies. Gravlord Nito's dance moves. The Tibia Mariner enemies that appear throughout Elden Ring perform a peculiar dance when you approach them, and this animation is directly taken from Gravelord Nito's movements in Dark Souls. Watch closely as the skeleton boatman sways and gestures before engaging in combat, and you'll recognize the exact same bone-rattling motions that Nito performed in his boss arena. This subtle animation reuse serves as a delightful callback for veteran players, while fitting perfectly with the Tibia Mariner's role as a servant of death. The developers could have created new animations for this enemy, but choosing to reference one of Dark Souls' most memorable bosses adds an extra layer of appreciation for those who notice it. Even the Tibia Mariner's association with death and boats calls back to Nito's role as Lord of the Dead and his connection to the catacombs. The giant blacksmith's apprentice, smithing master Iji, the giant blacksmith found in Leonia, wears a distinctive helmet that closely resembles the helm worn by the giant blacksmith in Anna Lundo from Dark Souls. This isn't coincidental. Both characters serve similar roles as friendly giant blacksmiths who provide crucial services to the player, and both wear ceremonial helmets that obscure their faces. Iji's gentle demeanor and his dedication to his craft mirror the beloved giant blacksmith perfectly. The connection deepens when you consider Iji's relationship with Rani and his role in her conspiracy. Like the giant blacksmith who served the gods of Anor Londo, Iji serves a deity figure in Rani, continuing this pattern of giant blacksmiths being loyal to higher powers. His tragic fate, dying alone still wearing his helmet and remaining loyal to Rani even after death, echoes the quiet nobility of his predecessor in Dark Souls. The ringed city's architecture, Farum Azula's crumbling architecture, bears unmistakable similarities to the ringed city from Dark Souls 3's final DLC. Both locations exist partially outside of time, feature ancient ruins suspended in impossible spaces, and contain secrets about the world's creation and earliest civilizations. The way Farum Azula's buildings float in fragments, connected by crumbling bridges and held together by unknown forces, directly mirrors the environmental design of the ringed city. Even the color palette matches, with both areas featuring that distinctive combination of aged stone, golden accents, and purple-tinted skies. The presence of ancient dragons in both locations further strengthens this connection, as does the revelation that both areas house fundamental secrets about their respective worlds' mythologies. From Software clearly used the ringed city as a template for Farum Azula, perfecting the concept of an ancient, timeless ruin that holds forbidden knowledge. The Dragon Slayer returns. The greatsword obtained from a chest in Caelid serves as Elden Ring's version of Guts' legendary Dragon Slayer from the manga Berserk. This massive slab of iron appears in virtually every From Software game in some form, but Elden Ring's iteration features design elements closest to its manga inspiration. The blade's description even calls it a waster of a colossal sword, echoing how Berserk describes the Dragon Slayer as being too big to be called a sword, more like a slab of raw iron. The weapon's sheer size and impossible weight make it a favorite among players who want to recreate Guts' aesthetic. What makes this version special is how From Software redesigned the crossguard and handled to more closely match the Dragon Slayer's appearance during Berserk's Golden Age arc, blending elements from different points in the manga's run. For longtime fans of both Berserk and From Software games, finding this weapon in Caelid feels like reuniting with an old friend. Radahn's Zod inspiration. General Radahn's design draws heavy inspiration from Nosferatu Zod from Berserk, particularly in his combat style and imposing presence. Both characters are legendary warriors known throughout their respective worlds for their incredible strength and fighting prowess. Radahn wields two enormous curved swords, fighting with a savage ferocity that mirrors Zod's battle style in his non-apostle form. The similarity extends to their armor as well, with Radahn's distinctive helmet and battle-scarred appearance evoking Zod's intimidating visage. Even Radahn's philosophy about honorable combat and his respect for worthy opponents parallels Zod's warrior code. The festival held in Radahn's honor, where warriors from across the lands between gather to challenge him, echoes the concept of Zod seeking worthy adversaries throughout Berserk. This connection becomes even more apparent when you consider how both characters eventually fall from their peak state. Radahn consumed by scarlet rot, Zod eventually subjugated by Griffith, transforming from proud warriors into tragic figures. The Skull Knight's blasphemous blade, Rykard's blasphemous blade, provides one of the most direct Berserk references in Elden Ring. This weapon closely resembles the sword of actuation that Skull Knight wields in Berserk, particularly in how it's described as being created from consumed beings. In Berserk, Skull Knight's blade is forged from behelots he's consumed, coating the sword in their essence. Similarly, the blasphemous blade's power comes from Rykard devouring countless warriors, their strength absorbed into the weapon. The visual design features a similar organic, almost grotesque quality, with the blade appearing as if it's made from melted and reformed material. Most tellingly, both Rykard and Skull Knight pull their weapons from their mouths, a distinctive and disturbing action that directly links these two characters. This specific detail pushes the reference beyond mere inspiration into deliberate homage territory. The blasphemous blade's weapon art even creates a pull effect that draws enemies in before striking them, mechanically representing the devouring aspect central to both weapons. Berserker armor comes to Elden Ring. The armor worn by Blade, the half-wolf, bears striking resemblance to Guts wearing the Berserker armor in Berserk. The overall silhouette, from the flowing cape to the helmet design and the general bulk of the armor, creates an immediately recognizable parallel. But the reference goes deeper than visual similarity. Blade's character arc mirrors aspects of Guts' struggle with the Berserker armor's influence. The armor description even contains a reference to Disney's Frozen, stating the cold bothered him anyway, which has become a beloved community joke about this otherwise serious character. Most significantly, Bled can be found striking the exact same pose that Guts frequently assumes in Berserk, crouched with his sword over his shoulder, a position so iconic that seeing it in Elden Ring immediately triggers recognition among Berserk fans. The developers ensured this wasn't accidental by making this pose occur in a cutscene and during specific moments in Bled's questline. Farnese's helmet on Millennia. Millennia's winged helmet closely resembles the helmet worn by Farnese in Berserk, particularly the version she wears during her time as a Holy Iron Chain Knight. The wing motifs, extending from the sides, and the overall elegant yet martial design create an unmistakable visual parallel. While Millennia and Farnese have very different roles in their respective stories, both characters embody a combination of nobility, combat prowess, and internal struggle. Farnese eventually abandons her militant ways to become a mage, while Millennia struggles against the scarlet rot that corrupts her body and threatens to overwhelm her identity. This shared theme of internal conflict makes the helmet reference more than just a visual nod. It connects two characters grappling with their nature and destiny. The pristine gold and red color scheme of Millennia's armor also evokes the ceremonial quality of Farnese's knightly attire, suggesting both characters occupy positions of high status within their societies. The Eclipse connection. The Miquella's Needle questline and various Eclipse imagery throughout Elden Ring reference one of Berserk's most traumatic events, the eclipse that transformed Griffith into Femto. While not a direct recreation, The game features several moments where massive celestial events occur, particularly during certain boss fights, and in locations like Mogwin Palace, where the sky displays an ominous red glow. The presence of the Formless Mother, an outer god associated with blood and sacrifice, parallels the God Hand's role in Berserk as higher beings who demand horrific prices for power. Castle Soul's eclipse-themed architecture and the ritual attempting to resurrect Godwyn through an eclipse ceremony strengthen this connection. The developers have woven eclipse symbolism throughout Elden Ring's world in ways that feel deliberately connected to Berserk's most iconic moment, creating a sense that similar cosmic forces manipulate events in both universes. Guts' face hidden under a helmet. In one of Elden Ring's most intricate Easter eggs, data miners discovered that the Knight of the Solitary Jail boss in the shadow of the Erdtree DLC has a face underneath his helmet that closely resembles Guts from Berserk. This face includes short-cropped hair, intense eyes, and facial features, matching the Black Swordsman's distinctive appearance. The fact that From Software modeled this face knowing that 99.9% of players would never see it demonstrates the depth of their appreciation for Berserk and their commitment to including references even in places where most people will never discover them. The Solitude armor set that this boss drops also features design elements from Guts' Berserker armor, making the entire encounter a multi-layered tribute. This hidden face represents the ultimate Easter egg, a secret so deeply buried that it requires data mining tools to uncover, yet crafted with the same care as any visible element of the game. Prisoner class channels. Griffith. The starting armor for the prisoner class bears resemblance to the iron mask placed on Griffith after his torture in Berserk. While some initially believed this referenced the man in the iron mask, closer examination reveals the design matches the cruel device used to hide Griffith's disfigured face. The mask's smooth, featureless quality and the way it completely encases the head create this visual connection. The prisoner class's starting stats and equipment also evoke Griffith's combination of physical prowess and magical ability, further strengthening this reference. Some players have noted that the prisoner's overall aesthetic, the tattered cape, the exposed body, the implication of past torture, mirrors Griffith's state when the Band of the Hawk rescues him. This makes choosing the prisoner class a way to start your journey as a broken but potentially powerful figure, much like Griffith's state before the eclipse. Erdtree echoes the world spiral. The Erdtree dominating Elden Ring skyline shares significant similarities with Berserk's world spiral tree, particularly in how it connects different planes of existence. Both massive trees serve as bridges between the physical and spiritual worlds, with their branches seemingly extending into infinity. The way the Erdtree's upper branches transform into pure light mirrors how the world spiral tree appears in Berserk after the merging of the physical and astral worlds. In both cases, these trees aren't merely large plants, but fundamental pillars of reality itself, their roots and branches defining the structure of their respective universes. The shadow of the Erdtree expansion deepens this connection by revealing that Miquella's Haligtree and the Shadow Realm Tree create a parallel to the world spiral's dual nature. From Software's decision to make the Erdtree central to Elden Ring's world, and lore feels like a direct homage to how Kentaro Miura used the world spiral tree as a keystone of Berserk's cosmology. Trolls reference the Jötnar. While the trolls in Elden Ring draw from Norse mythology, like the Jötnar in Berserk, they also share specific design elements with their manga counterparts. Both are portrayed as tragic figures, once proud giants reduced to servitude and branded with symbols of their subjugation. Elden Ring's trolls have large holes in their torsos where their faces once were, a disturbing detail that echoes how the Jötnar in Berserk are depicted as victims of persecution. The trolls pulling carts and performing labor throughout the lands between mirrors how the Jötnar were enslaved in Berserk's world. This parallel transforms the trolls from simple enemies into tragic figures whose very existence tells a story of oppression and loss, much like how Miura portrayed the Jötnar. The fact that some trolls fight on your side while others remain hostile reflects the complex nature of their servitude and suggests not all have fully succumbed to their subjugation. The golden eye's mark of grace. One of Elden Ring's subtlest visual details appears in the eyes of NPCs and enemies throughout the lands between. Characters who possess the grace of gold blessed by the Erd tree have a distinctive golden coloring in their eyes, while tarnished characters like the player lack this feature entirely. This environmental storytelling technique conveys crucial lore information without a single line of dialogue. Data miners examining character models discovered that the intensity of the golden coloring directly correlates to how strongly connected a character is to the Golden Order and the Erd tree's influence. Some characters have only faint traces of gold, suggesting their connection to grace is weakening, while others display brilliant golden irises indicating strong faith in the current order. This detail becomes especially poignant when you realize that every NPC and enemy you meet can tell at a glance that you're tarnished, simply by looking at your eyes, reinforcing your status as an outsider in this world. Margit hides among commoners. In the capital outskirts, a seemingly ordinary commoner transforms into Margit the Fell Omen when you approach. Unlike other transformation enemies in the game that drop larval tears when defeated, this Margit doesn't drop one, suggesting this isn't a mimic tear pretending to be Margit, but actually Margit himself using transformation magic. This discovery reveals that even after you defeat him at Stormvale Castle, Margit continues watching the approaches to Leyndell, disguised among the common folk. The implications are fascinating. Margit can apparently shapeshift or project himself into different forms, explaining how he appears in multiple locations despite being a single entity. This transformation also means you might have walked past Margit in commoner form multiple times without realizing it, as there's no way to identify which commoner he'll be disguised as until you get close enough to trigger the transformation. It's a brilliant bit of environmental storytelling that adds layers to Margit's character as a persistent guardian of the capital, Leonard's impossible burden. General Radahn rides Leonard, a horse that appears comically small beneath the massive demigod's weight. The Easter egg here goes beyond the humorous visual. Radahn learned gravity magic specifically so he could continue riding Leonard without crushing his beloved mount. Item descriptions note that Radahn mastered these reality-bending sorceries to nullify his own mass, allowing Leonard to carry him without harm. This touching detail transforms Radahn from merely a powerful warrior into a character capable of deep affection. Someone who would master one of the most difficult schools of magic primarily to preserve his relationship with his horse. The fact that Leonard survives the entire boss fight and never abandons Radahn, even in his rot-maddened state, speaks to the strength of their bond. Even after Radahn's mind has been consumed by scarlet rot, he never harms Leonard, suggesting that his love for his horse persists even when everything else about his personality has deteriorated. Weather affects your spells. Rain in Elden Ring isn't purely atmospheric. It actively modifies combat performance in ways most players never notice. Fire-based spells and weapon skills deal slightly reduced damage during rainfall as the moisture dampens flames, making your fiery incantations less effective. Conversely, lightning-based attacks receive a damage boost during rainy weather, since water conducts electricity more effectively. This creates tactical considerations where weather patterns can shift the optimal approach to combat, rewarding players who pay attention to environmental conditions. The system extends beyond simple rain effects. During golden leaf rain, a rare weather phenomenon that occurs when someone in your multiplayer group defeats a major boss, players receive a 5% increase to rune acquisition from defeated enemies. This beautiful environmental detail serves both as a visual spectacle and a subtle multiplayer connection, reminding you that other players across the world are progressing in their journeys even as you pursue your own path through the lands between. Godwyn's spreading corruption. Beneath Stormvale Castle lies a grotesque face emerging from roots and organic matter, representing the corrupted remains of Godwyn the Golden. But this hideous visage isn't isolated to Stormvale. The same face appears in multiple locations throughout the lands between, revealing that Godwyn's death-blight corruption is literally spreading like a plague through the world's root system. Most disturbingly, this corruption affects local wildlife. Crabs and aquatic creatures found in water flowing above or near Godwyn's influence have developed tumorous growths resembling aspects of his corrupted face. The crabs in Lendal's moat, directly above where Godwyn's body rests in the deep-root depths, show particularly grotesque mutations with death-touch growths sprouting from their shells. This environmental storytelling reveals a slow-motion tragedy. The first demigod to die didn't simply pass into oblivion, but instead created a spreading corruption that threatens to eventually consume the entire world, growing stronger with each passing moment. The merchant's dark secret. Every nomadic merchant in Elden Ring uses frenzied flame incantations when attacked, employing madness-inducing spells that seem incongruous with their humble personas. This combat behavior hints at their connection to one of the game's darkest secrets. Deep beneath Lendal, in the subterranean shunning grounds, lies a mass grave containing dozens of merchant corpses, all wearing the same clothing as the living merchants you've encountered throughout your journey. The Great Caravan, the collective community of traveling merchants, was massacred and their bodies dumped into underground chambers sealed away from the world above. The survivors you meet wandering the lands between are the few who escaped this genocide, forever separated from their people and forced to travel alone. Their mastery of frenzied flame incantations suggests the suffering and desperation of the merchants drew the attention of the Three Fingers, granting them the power of chaos and madness. Killing any nomadic merchant causes all merchants in the game to become permanently hostile, reflecting their remaining bonds of community even after being torn apart. The transformation enemy pattern. Scattered throughout the lands between, certain enemies appear completely normal until you get too close. Then they transform into something terrifying. A simple commoner suddenly becomes a massive rune bear. A sleeping soldier morphs into an abductor virgin. These shape-shifting foes initially seem random, but there's a lore justification. Every transformation enemy drops a larval tear when killed. This connects them to the silver tears and mimic tears found in Nokron and other eternal cities. The item descriptions reveal that larval tears are intimately connected to transformation and rebirth. The the same power that allows Renala to reshape bodies and reallocate attributes. The theory suggests these transformed enemies are actually mimic tears that found their way to the surface world and established themselves among regular enemies, using weak forms as camouflage. Their ability to perfectly replicate other creatures and absorb their combat capabilities explains why they can so convincingly appear as harmless NPCs or common animals before revealing their true, dangerous natures. Fia's health-sharing embrace. When you first meet Fia at Round Table Hold, she offers to hold you, an embrace that slightly reduces your maximum HP in exchange for receiving the Baldachin's Blessing consumable. Most players view this as a simple trade-off, but the secret runs deeper. Fia's entire character revolves around sharing in death and providing comfort to those who live in death. Her dress, which can be obtained after completing her questline, has a hidden function. It restores health to nearby allies when worn. This mechanic ties directly into Fia's role as a deathbed companion, someone who provides comfort and shares in the suffering of others. The HP reduction she causes isn't her draining you. It's her method of creating a connection, taking a portion of your vitality to mix with her own essence. The Baldachin's Blessing you receive represents this exchange made tangible, a consumable that grants a temporary boost to poise. Understanding this dynamic transforms Fia from a suspicious character who weakens you into someone genuinely offering a form of intimate connection, even if that connection comes with costs. The Cuckoo's military campaign. The Cuckoos referenced throughout Raya Lucaria aren't merely a school of magic. They represent a military order that invaded Leyndell itself. Item descriptions and environmental details reveal that Cuckoo Knights led an assault on the royal capital, bringing the Academy's military might directly against Marika's seat of power. Evidence of this invasion appears in both locations, with Cuckoo shields and equipment found in Leyndell streets, and references to the campaign appearing in various item descriptions. The invasion's outcome remains ambiguous, but the fact that Renala still rules Raya Lucaria while Leyndell stands suggests the campaign ended in stalemate rather than decisive victory for either side. This hidden war adds context to the political tensions throughout the lands between, revealing that the Academy pursued aggressive military expansion beyond mere scholarly pursuits. The presence of battle mages and magic knights among the Cuckoos shows how Raya Lucaria transformed theoretical sorcery into practical military applications. Renala's Amber Egg secret. The Amber Egg Renala cradles contains more significance than initially apparent. This egg was a gift from Radagon when he left her to return to Leyndell and marry Marika, and it has become both Renala's obsession and her prison. But examining the egg's properties reveals it contains genuine power. It's the source of Renala's rebirth abilities. When you defeat Renala, she offers these same services to you, reshaping bodies and reallocating attributes without the grotesque side effects that afflicted her students. The egg apparently contains knowledge or power related to rebirth itself, possibly connected to Radagon's own nature as someone who can merge with and separate from Marika. Renala's sweetings, the crawling, malformed students surrounding her, represent failed attempts to unlock the egg's secrets before she finally mastered the technique. The tragedy lies in how Renala achieved this mastery. By the time she perfected rebirth, her mind had deteriorated so much from Radagon's abandonment that she barely recognizes what she's accomplished. The walking mausoleum's bells. The massive walking mausoleums traversing the lands between ring their bells constantly, creating a mournful toll that echoes across the landscape. These bells serve multiple purposes beyond mere atmosphere. They announce the presence of noble dead, warning away those who would disturb the monuments. They potentially call to other spirits or forces, maintaining some connection to the realm of death. Most importantly, the bell tone changes slightly based on which demigod the mausoleum honors, though this detail is so subtle that most players never consciously notice it. Musicians and sound-sensitive players have reported that each mausoleum rings at slightly different pitches, creating a unique sonic signature. The bells also seem to affect enemy behavior. Hostile creatures near walking mausoleums display altered patterns, sometimes becoming docile when the bells ring or showing signs of distress. This suggests the bells influence more than just atmosphere, potentially affecting the barrier between life and death in their immediate vicinity. Stone stakes connect to death. The small stone stakes protruding from the ground that indicate spirit summoning locations aren't randomly placed for gameplay balance. Each location has lore-justified connections to death and the spirit realm. Boss arenas naturally feature these stakes because countless warriors have fallen in battle there, strengthening the connection to death. Underground areas have abundant stakes because subterranean realms exist closer to the Erdtree's roots, where the dead return to be absorbed back into the tree's system of rebirth. Certain overworld locations feature stakes because of historical events, battlefields where great conflicts occurred, places where important figures died, areas where the natural boundary between life and death has worn thin. The blue gate symbol appearing on screen when you can summon spirits represents this lore concept in user interface form. You're not arbitrarily calling spirits because the game allows it. You're accessing locations where the barrier between the living world and the realm of spirits is thin enough to permit their temporary manifestation. The Mimic Tier's self-creation, the Mimic Tier boss fight in Nokron, provides one of the game's most unique encounters, fighting a perfect copy of yourself with all your equipment and abilities. But the hidden detail makes this even more interesting. The Mimic Tier copies your loadout at the exact moment you pass through the fog gate. Players discovered they could unequip all their gear right before entering the boss room, creating a Mimic Tier with no weapons or armor that dies in seconds. This exploit reveals how the Mimic's copying ability functions mechanically, but it also raises lore questions. If the Mimic Tier can perfectly replicate any form it encounters, including absorbing knowledge of how to use complex weapons and spells, what prevents these creatures from replacing anyone in the lands between? The Eternal City's downfall might be partially attributed to these shapeshifters infiltrating and destabilizing their civilization from within. Perfect imposters that even family members couldn't distinguish from the real person. The Dung Eater's name, Revelation. Known as the Loathsome Dung Eater, this character's name initially seems like crude shock value, but examining his armor and questline reveals the horrible truth behind this epithet. The Dung Eater doesn't merely kill his victims, he defiles their corpses in ways that curse their souls, preventing them from returning to the Erdtree and ensuring they'll be reborn with horrible afflictions. His armor description mentions he desecrates the dead specifically to perpetuate a cycle of curses across generations. The dung reference relates to his victims being defiled so thoroughly that their souls become corrupted like waste products, unable to return cleanly to the Erdtree's cycle. He's called Dung Eater because he metaphorically consumes and destroys the spiritual essence of his victims, reducing their souls to something foul. His questline ending, where he curses the entire lands between, represents his ultimate goal, transforming the world into a place where everyone carries these defilement curses, creating a new age built on perpetual suffering. Mog's Palace location. Mogwyn Palace exists in a seemingly impossible location, accessible only through specific teleportation methods or by using the Pureblood Knight's medal. The palace appears to occupy a space outside normal geography, similar to Farum Azula, but with different properties. Examining the sky and surroundings suggests Mogwyn Palace exists in some sort of pocket dimension, or reality separate from the lands between proper. The blood-red sky and the massive corpse of what appears to be a god in the distance create an atmosphere of wrong reality, a place that shouldn't exist within normal space. This separation makes sense given Mog's goals. He needed a realm apart from the Golden Order's influence to build his blood cult and attempt to create his own age. The palace's impossible architecture and the way distances seem distorted within it further suggest this space operates under different physical laws than the rest of the game world. The Albinauric second generation. Albinaurics appear in two distinct forms throughout Elden Ring. The first generation with frog-like faces found in Liurnia, and the second generation silver-skinned archers found in Ordina and the Haligtree. These aren't different species, but rather iterations of artificial life creation. The first generation Albinaurics have a fatal flaw. Their legs degenerate over time, eventually becoming completely useless. You can observe this progression by examining different Albinaurics. Some still walk normally, others have weakened legs, and many have lost the use of their legs entirely and crawl or ride wolves. The second generation attempted to correct this flaw by redesigning the Albinauric form entirely, creating the Silver Warriors. However, these second generation Albinaurics face their own problems, implied to have shorter lifespans or other degenerative issues. This two-generation structure reveals the Albinaurics aren't just a race, but an ongoing experiment in creating artificial life, with each iteration trying to fix the previous version's flaws while introducing new problems. Latenna's giant reveal. Latenna's questline involves traveling to the consecrated snowfield and eventually reaching the Apostate Derelict, a ruined church containing the corpse of a massive Albinauric woman. When you summon Latenna near this giant, she speaks to it, revealing this was Philia, her sister, and potentially the first or one of the earliest second-generation Albinaurics. The giant's presence raises questions about Albinauric creation. Was gigantism another defect, or were early second-generation Albinaurics intentionally made large before the creators refined the process? Latenna's quest to reach her sister suggests this pilgrimage holds spiritual significance for Albinaurics, possibly representing a return to their origins or a way to honor their fallen progenitors. The hidden detail here is that summoning Latenna at this specific location is optional and easily missed, but doing so provides crucial context about Albinauric history and reveals that Latenna's journey wasn't merely about following you, but had a deeply personal destination all along. Rani's multiple bodies. Rani the witch exists in a complicated state of embodiment. She inhabits a doll crafted in the image of her mentor, the Snow Witch, but her original body lies hidden elsewhere. Players can find Rani's original corpse in Liurnia's Divine Tower, a grotesque reminder of the Night of Black Knives when she killed her own flesh to free herself from the Two Fingers' control. But the secret goes deeper. Examining Rani's doll form closely reveals it's not merely a puppet. She controls remotely, but a genuine physical vessel she inhabits. This explains why she can interact with physical objects, bleed when damaged, and exist in the world rather than merely projecting herself. The miniature Rani doll you can find and interact with in her tower represents yet another layer of her divided existence, a smaller copy that contains a fragment of her consciousness and can communicate independently. This multiplication of bodies suggests Rani has achieved something beyond normal spirit projection, fragmenting her existence across multiple vessels while maintaining coherent identity. The Tarnished's true purpose. Gideon Ofnir, the All-Knowing, reveals a devastating secret in his final confrontation. Queen Marika wants the Tarnished to struggle eternally without anyone achieving victory. He's concluded that Marika desires perpetual conflict, with Tarnished forever fighting and dying without reaching the Erdtree. This revelation recontextualizes the entire journey. Marika stripped Godfrey and his warriors of grace and banished them specifically to create the Tarnished, an army that would eventually return when called. But Gideon suggests this wasn't a plan for the Tarnished to succeed, but rather for them to provide endless struggle, keeping the lands between in permanent stalemate. Evidence for this interpretation appears in how Marika both calls the Tarnished back and simultaneously seems to have shattered the Elden Ring to prevent anyone from claiming it. She appears to want both change and stasis, creating an impossible situation that guarantees eternal conflict. Gideon has embraced this nihilistic vision, attempting to kill you not because he's evil, but because he believes the struggle itself is the point, and your potential success would somehow violate Marika's true will. The Two Fingers delay. When you finally burn the Erdtree and seek the Two Fingers' blessing to become Elden Lord, Enya reveals that the Two Fingers have entered communion with the greater will, but need time to receive a response, time measured in thousands of years. This shocking revelation means the Two Fingers have been operating without direct guidance from the greater will for the entirety of your journey, and possibly for much longer. Everything they've told you about the greater will's desires might be their interpretation, rather than direct commands. This explains many inconsistencies in the Golden Order's doctrines, and suggests the system has been running on institutional momentum rather than divine instruction. The fact that the greater will responds so slowly, if at all, raises questions about whether it even cares about the lands between anymore, or if the Two Fingers are middle management abandoned by their employer, desperately maintaining a system whose creator has moved on to other concerns. Hugh's true task. Smithing Master Hugh at Round Table Hold appears to be simply a blacksmith serving the Tarnished, but his dialogue reveals a tragic secret. He's been tasked by Marika herself to create a weapon capable of killing a god, and he cannot leave Round Table Hold until he succeeds. This assignment has become his entire existence, his obsession, and his prison. When Round Table Hold begins burning near the game's end, Hugh continues working, his mind deteriorating but his hands still hammering at the forge, desperately trying to fulfill the task Marika assigned him, even as reality collapses around him. The hidden tragedy is that the Hugh succeeds. By upgrading your weapons to maximum level, he does create god-slaying armaments, as evidenced by your ability to defeat Radagon and the Elden Beast. But Hugh's dementia prevents him from recognizing his success, and he dies still believing he failed his one purpose. The hammering sounds that echo through the burning hold in the endgame are Hugh's final moments, still working at his impossible task even in death. Bok's transformation and tragedy. Bok the Seamster appears as a small demi-human who can alter your garments, but his questline contains a devastating hidden path. If you give Bok a larval tear and tell him to use Renala's rebirth to become human, he'll go through with the transformation. However, rebirth doesn't work properly on demi-humans. Bok dies shortly after being transformed, his last words being about how he finally felt beautiful. The game never explains why rebirth failed for Bok. Players theorize that demi-humans' fundamental nature is too different from human for Renala's technique to properly reshape them, or that Bok's self-hatred caused the rebirth to malfunction. The tragedy deepens because this outcome is completely avoidable. If you find and use the "You're Beautiful" prattling part, a random voice option that you could easily miss or never use, Bok accepts himself and survives. This hidden good ending for Bok's quest rewards thorough exploration and experimental use of seemingly silly items, but the majority of players never discover it, instead inadvertently guiding Bok to his death while trying to help him. The Jarben's future. In Jarberg, a village of sentient warrior jars, you meet Jarben, a small jar who dreams of becoming a great warrior like the others. Through conversations with other jars and Jarben himself, you learn the disturbing truth about how warrior jars are created. They contain the remains of dead warriors packed into their interior, absorbing the strength and skills of these fallen fighters. This explains why Alexander is so powerful. He's absorbed countless warriors over time, their combat expertise mixing together inside his vessel. Jarben's innocent dreams of becoming a great warrior take on darker implications. Once you understand, he'll need to fill himself with dead warriors' remains to achieve this goal. The game never shows Jarben's final fate, but if he succeeds in becoming a warrior jar, it means he's followed the same path as Alexander, consuming death to gain power. This hidden law transforms the cute jar village into something more unsettling, revealing that these cheerful characters exist because of and perpetuate a cycle of death and consumption. Selen's ultimate fate, completing sorcerer. Selen's questline can lead to her transformation into one of the graven masses, horrible amalgamations of multiple sorcerers' heads fused together into a barely living lump. If you side with Selen against Jeren, she successfully overthrows the Academy's current leadership and installs herself as the new head. However, when you return later, you find Selen has been transformed into a graven mass, the same fate that befell other primeval sorcerers who pushed their research too far. The game never explicitly explains what caused this transformation, whether it was punishment from rival sorcerers, a consequence of Selen's own experiments, or an inevitable result of pursuing primeval sorcery's forbidden knowledge. The most disturbing implication is that Selen might have chosen this transformation, believing it represented some form of transcendence or ultimate understanding of glintstone magic. She's still alive in this state, capable of speaking in distorted voice, aware of her transformation, but unable or unwilling to reverse it. Nefeli and Huara Lu's connection. Nefeli Lu, the warrior you meet early in the game, shares her surname with Huara Lu, Godfrey's true name before he became Elden Lord. This isn't coincidental. Nefeli is implied to be a descendant of Godfrey's lineage, possibly his distant relative, or even his direct descendant through some unknown path. Gideon Offner adopted Nefeli specifically because of this connection, recognizing her importance within the Golden lineage and positioning himself to exploit that knowledge. When Nefeli expresses moral doubts about Gideon's methods, he disowns her without hesitation, revealing their paternal relationship was always transactional. The game implies that if Nefeli completes her questline and becomes Lord of Stormvale, she might represent a continuation of Godfrey's legacy, a ruler who embodies his strength and honor rather than Godric's desperate grafted power. Kenneth Haight's search for a true lord of the golden lineage concludes with Nephili, suggesting she carries legitimate claim to rulership through her connection to the first Elden Lord. Millicent's Millennia connection. Millicent and her sisters are revealed to be buds of Millennia, essentially extensions or offspring of the Scarlet Aeonia bloom. This means Millicent isn't fully human, but rather a manifestation of Millennia's scarlet rot-taking humanoid form. Her quest to remove Miquella's needle and accept her nature represents her choosing to embrace what she truly is, a daughter of rot, rather than continuing to fight against her fundamental nature. The tragedy is that accepting this truth likely means Millicent will eventually bloom herself, becoming another source of scarlet rot corruption. Her sisters have already accepted this fate, blooming in the swamp of Aeonia and spreading rot throughout that region. Millicent's choice to bloom in the Halig tree, near Millennia herself, suggests she's returning to her origin point, completing a circle that began with Millennia's first bloom. The unalloyed gold needle you can recover from Millicent represents her rejecting the very thing that could have saved her, choosing authentic existence as a creature of rot over a suppressed life denying her nature. Tanith's final act, after defeating Rykard. If you return to Volcano Manor much later, you'll find Tanith in Rykard's boss chamber, consuming his remains. This disturbing scene reveals the depth of Tanith's devotion to Rykard exceeded mere loyalty to a lord. She loved him despite, or perhaps because of his transformation, into the god-devouring serpent. By consuming his flesh, Tanith attempts to keep Rykard alive within herself, refusing to accept his death. If you attack Tanith during this scene, she'll summon Rykard's Crucible Knight to defend her, and upon her death, you can retrieve Rykard's head from her body, suggesting she'd already consumed a significant portion of his remains. This optional encounter adds tragic depth to Tanith's character, revealing that beneath her composed aristocratic demeanor lay obsessive devotion that persisted beyond death and reason. Her final act of cannibalism represents love twisted into something monstrous, appropriate for Volcano Manor's themes of transgression and consumption. The flame of ambition's true purpose. The blacksmith. Hugh mentions that proper smithing requires the flame of ambition, but most players don't realize this phrase has deeper lore significance. The flames used in forging at Round Table Hold aren't ordinary fire, but manifestations of ambition itself. Desire made tangible and hot enough to reshape metal and destiny. This connects to the broader theme of will and determination affecting reality in Elden Ring's world. Characters' desires and goals can literally manifest as physical phenomena. Hugh's obsession with creating a god-slaying weapon feeds these flames, his desperate ambition providing the heat necessary for transcendent smithing. This explains why Hugh can upgrade weapons beyond what normal blacksmiths achieve. His all-consuming dedication to his task provides fuel for flames hot enough to create implements capable of harming gods. When the Round Table Hold burns near the end of the game, those aren't normal flames consuming the building, but the accumulated ambition of all the tarnished who resided there, their collective desires literally catching fire. The Carian royal family's secret. The Carian royal family possesses an unusual connection to the cosmos and cold sorcery distinct from Raya Lucaria's glintstone magic. Renala married into this family when she wed Radagon, but the Carians, Rani, Rykard, and Radan, all display abilities that blend their Carian heritage with Renala's sorcerous teachings. The secret is that the Carian family's power seems to derive from an outer god or cosmic force related to the dark moon and cold. Rani's dark moon sorceries specifically invoke the dark moon, an entity or force separate from Renala's full moon. The Carian's royal manor contains numerous references to lunar worship and cosmic observation, suggesting their power comes from stellar sources rather than earthly study. This explains why all three Carian children developed such extraordinary abilities. They inherited connections to both Renala's glintstone magic and the Carian family's cosmic pacts. Rani's plan to become a god herself and leave with the Elden Ring might represent the Carian family's ultimate goal, achieving the same cosmic status as the outer gods they've long observed and perhaps worshipped. Sacred Tears and Flask origins. The Flask of Tears system used to upgrade your healing and FP flasks has hidden lore significance. These flasks contain tears from the Erd tree itself, concentrated sap that holds life-giving properties. Sacred tears found at churches throughout the lands between represent locations where the Erd tree's blessing was strong enough to physically manifest as weeping sap, creating these crystallized tear deposits. Golden seeds similarly represent the Erd tree's life force condensed into physical form. The system implies that drinking from these flasks means consuming pieces of the Erd tree itself, literally internalizing the tree's power to sustain yourself. This creates an interesting parallel with Rykard devouring champions and the god devouring serpents' consumption. Everyone in the lands between participates in consumption of power, whether through drinking the Erd tree's tears or more grotesque methods. The churches where sacred tears appear were likely pilgrimage sites where the faithful came to directly receive the Erd tree's blessing in liquid form, with the tears you find being centuries-old remnants of that sacred sap. Smithing stones' true nature. Smithing stones aren't merely refined minerals, but fragments of the lands between's fundamental structure, pieces of reality compressed into physical form. The different colored smithing stones, regular for standard weapons, somber for special armaments, represent different aspects of this crystallized reality. Regular smithing stones come in tiers, showing increased purity and concentration, while somber stones maintain consistent quality, but are rarer and more precious. Ancient dragon smithing stones, the highest tier, are described as scales shed by ancient dragons, revealing that these ultimate upgrade materials are organic in origin rather than mineral. This suggests that dragons in Elden Ring's world are beings of such fundamental power that their discarded body parts surpass any forged or mined material. The process of weapon upgrading isn't merely improving the physical blade, but infusing it with increasingly pure fragments of reality and dragon essence, explaining how upgraded weapons can eventually harm gods. They've been reinforced with the world's own substance and the power of ancient dragons. Bell bearings. Dark implication. The bell bearing system allows you to give merchants bells to the Twin Maiden husks after killing the merchants, consolidating all shops into one location. But this convenience has dark implications. The bell bearings are described as proof of a merchant's demise, suggesting these are literally pulled from the merchant's corpses. The Twin Maiden husks' willingness to immediately start selling dead merchants' wares without question implies they're accustomed to this transaction, perhaps even designed for it. Some players theorize the husks were created specifically to facilitate this consolidation, allowing Tarnished to methodically murder all merchants and centralize commerce at Round Table Hold. The disturbing efficiency of the system, kill merchant, take bell, hand to husks, access inventory, suggests this isn't an unintended exploit, but a designed feature, raising questions about who created these husks and why they anticipated Tarnished would want to eliminate all merchants. The fact that merchants become permanently hostile after you kill even one suggests they know about this system and recognize you as someone participating in their genocide. Rainbow stones. Detect fools. Rainbow stones, simple items that create colored light when placed, have a hidden function most players never discover. If you throw a rainbow stone off a cliff or ledge, the way it breaks reveals whether that fall would kill you. If the stone shatters on impact, the fall is fatal. If it remains intact and glowing, you can survive that drop. This seemingly decorative item actually serves as a crucial survival tool, allowing you to scout dangerous descents before risking your life. The game never explains this function explicitly, leaving players to discover it through experimentation or community knowledge. This design philosophy, hiding crucial mechanical information inside item behaviors without tutorial explanation, exemplifies From Software's approach to teaching through discovery. Players who experiment with their environment and items find advantages, while those who treat items as mere decorations miss out on valuable tools. The Shabriri grapes. Truth. Hieta's questline involves feeding her Shabriri grapes, items she believes are grapes but are actually human eyes. The first two come from corpses, but the third requires removing the eyes from a living NPC, the nomadic merchant near the frenzied flame prescription. The horrible truth is that Shabriri grapes have always been eyes. The name itself is a twisted joke or euphemism. Hieta, being blind, cannot see what she's consuming and trusts your description. Her comments about the grapes tasting unusual take on disturbing new, meaning once you realize she's been eating human eyes all along. This consumption might explain her ability to somehow see spiritual truths about the frenzied flame despite her blindness. Eating eyes, especially eyes touched by the frenzied flame's madness, could grant alternate forms of perception. The questline forces players into complicity with this grotesque deception, making you responsible for feeding eyes to a blind woman who trusts you. The Crimson Rot's true origin. Scarlet Rot and the Lake of Rot beneath the lands. Between predate the Erdtree's age, representing an older primordial force. The rot isn't merely a disease, but the influence of an outer god of rot attempting to assert dominance over the lands between. Millennia serves as this god's chosen champion, despite resisting its full influence. The pests found in the Lake of Rot and around rot-afflicted areas worship this outer god, offering prayers that the age of rot will eventually arrive. The god's plan appears to be using millennia to spread rot gradually, transforming the world region by region, until the rot god's influence overwhelms the greater will's golden order. Each time millennia blooms, she spreads this influence further, while simultaneously becoming more integrated with the rot god's power. Her curse isn't random affliction, but a calculated assault by an outer god on the current world order, using millennia as both weapon and victim in a divine conflict playing out across eons. The Crucible Knight's abandonment. Crucible Knight served the Erdtree in its earliest days when the primordial crucible, the raw, chaotic source of all life, still influenced the world directly. Their abilities reflect this ancient connection, with skills that sprout tails, wings, and horns representing the Crucible's unpredictable mixing of life forms. But the Crucible became viewed as impure as the Golden Order codified itself into strict hierarchies and categories. The Crucible Knights found themselves abandoned by the Order they served, their once honored powers now seen as primitive and crude. This explains why you find Crucible Knights serving various masters throughout the lands between, rather than united under any single banner. They're mercenaries now, their original purpose obsolete, selling their ancient skills to whoever will employ them. The tragedy is that these knights remained loyal to the ideals of the early Erd Tree, even as the Erd Tree itself evolved beyond and ultimately rejected their kind of power. Ancestral Followers' Eternal Hunt. The Ancestral Followers in Siofra River and Ainsel River aren't merely primitive tribal people, but participants in an eternal cycle. These beings exist outside the Erd Tree's influence, following older spiritual practices centered on ancestral worship and the Crucible. Their reverence for horned animals, particularly the ancestor spirits you can fight as bosses, represents a different understanding of life, death, and rebirth than the Golden Order's system. The Ancestral Followers appear to believe that spirits of the dead return as these horned creatures, creating a cycle where hunters become the hunted and prey become predators in an endless rotation. This explains their willingness to defend the ancestor spirits so fiercely while also hunting other creatures. They're protecting their literal ancestors, who currently inhabit animal forms. The underground rivers where they dwell exist outside the Erd Tree's reach, allowing these alternative belief systems to persist unchanged since before the Golden Age began. The Mimic Veil's implications. The Mimic Veil allows you to transform into an environmental object, becoming a bush, statue, or other innocuous item. This simple stealth tool has disturbing lore implications when you consider it in conjunction with the Mimic Tears from the Eternal Cities. If a common item can grant transformation abilities, and Mimic Tears can perfectly replicate complex beings, how many objects in the lands between might actually be transformed creatures waiting to strike? The game establishes that transformation is common enough that items exist to facilitate it, suggesting the world contains far more shapeshifters and hidden entities than you might realize. Those statues lining castle corridors, the bushes in secluded areas, even seemingly decorative objects, any could be transformed beings observing, waiting, or hiding. This paranoia-inducing possibility recontextualizes every environment as potentially filled with watchers and infiltrators. The Gloam-Eyed Queen's defeat. References scattered throughout item descriptions mention the Gloam-Eyed Queen, a figure who once wielded destined death before Malekith defeated her and sealed that power away. This ancient conflict predates most of the game's events, but shaped the world you explore. The Godskin apostles and nobles you encounter served this queen, and their continued existence suggests either they're immortal remnants of her age, or they've been continuously recruiting and maintaining their order despite their god's defeat. The black flame they wield represents the power of destined death itself, capable of killing gods permanently. Marika's decision to have Malekith seal destined death away prevented gods from dying, making her and other divine beings effectively immortal. This created the stagnant age you discover, where demigods can't truly die even when killed, leading to the half-death states of Godwyn and the existence of those who live in death. The Gloam-Eyed Queen's defeat might have been necessary to establish Marika's order, but it also removed death's natural function, creating many of the world's current problems. Astal's cosmic horror. Astal, natural-born of the void, represents something that shouldn't exist in the lands between. A cosmic entity from outer space that physically crashed into the world. Item descriptions reveal that Astal's arrival destroyed an eternal city, literally falling from the sky and obliterating the underground civilization. The fact that you encounter multiple astels, one in the Lake of Rot, another in the Yellow Annex Tunnel, suggests either these creatures are common in the cosmos, or the being can manifest in multiple locations simultaneously. Astel's design, featuring a skull-like head emerging from a mass of cosmic matter with gravity manipulating abilities, portrays it as fundamentally alien to the Lands Between's normal biology. This hints at a universe beyond the Lands Between, populated by entities that occasionally intrude on this world, bringing destruction and chaos. The stars that Radan holds in place might not be mere celestial bodies, but similar cosmic horrors waiting to fall. The Knights of Black Knives. Conspiracy. The Knight of Black Knives wasn't a single assassination, but a coordinated conspiracy involving multiple factions with different goals. Ranni orchestrated it to kill her own body while simultaneously killing Godwyn's soul, creating two half-deaths instead of one complete death. The Black Knife assassins who carried it out were Numen women rumored to be close to Marika, suggesting the Queen herself might have had knowledge of or involvement in the plot. This creates the disturbing possibility that Marika participated in or allowed her own son's murder. Different factions had different motivations. Ranni sought freedom from her Empyrean destiny. Marika possibly wanted to trigger events leading to the Shattering, and the Eternal Cities saw an opportunity to strike against the Golden Order. The fact that fragments of the Rune of Death were used in the assassination required Malekith's seal to be broken or bypassed, indicating someone with intimate knowledge of how Destined Death worked orchestrated the theft. This multi-layered conspiracy shows that nothing in Elden Ring's story is straightforward, with every major event involving multiple actors with competing interests. The Erdtree's denial. When you finally gather enough great runes and attempt to enter the Erdtree, you discover it's sealed with thorns that no amount of power can penetrate. Melina reveals the only way to burn these thorns and enter the tree is to use the Flame of Ruin, a power the Erdtree itself fears. This moment reveals the Erdtree, supposedly the source of all grace and blessing, is actively preventing Tarnish from becoming Elden Lord. The thorns represent the Erdtree's will, or the Greater Will's decision to bar entry, suggesting the entire premise of the Tarnished returning to repair the Elden Ring might be a lie or test. The tree grants grace to guide you, but simultaneously refuses to allow your goal's completion, creating a paradoxical situation. Some interpret this as Marika's doing, with the Queen creating the barrier to prevent anyone from entering and claiming the Elden Ring. Others believe the Greater Will sealed the tree after Marika shattered the ring, attempting to preserve what remains. Either way, the revelation that burning the Erdtree is necessary to enter it transforms your quest from restoration to destruction. The Giant's Flame Curse. The fire giant you fight in the mountaintops of the Giants is the last survivor of a genocide. Marika ordered the extermination of the Giants because their fire posed a threat to the Erdtree. Every giant was slaughtered, their bodies left to rot in the mountains, except for one whom Marika cursed to tend the Flame of Ruin for eternity. This curse forced the last giant to maintain the very power that doomed his entire race, ensuring the flame never died, but also trapping him in eternal servitude. The giant's missing leg suggests he attempted to escape his duty at some point, possibly severing his own leg to be free of the curse binding him to the forge. When you defeat him, his final act is to fall backward into the forge, using his own body as fuel to ensure the flame continues burning. This tragic gesture suggests he's accepted his role and chooses to fulfill it on his own terms by making his death meaningful. Marika's motivations revealed. Scattered throughout the world in various churches and locations, you can find Marika's spoken echoes, brief statements she made that reveal her true feelings about the golden order she established. These echoes show Marika questioning her own creation, expressing doubt about the greater will's plan, and possibly even feeling trapped by the system she built. One echo suggests Marika wanted to understand why the Erd Tree denied her children's aspirations. Another implies she sought knowledge forbidden by the Golden Order itself. These fragments paint a picture of a god growing disillusioned with her own divinity, realizing the Golden Order created suffering rather than alleviating it. This context makes her shattering of the Elden Ring comprehensible. It wasn't madness, but a desperate attempt to break a system she'd come to see as fundamentally flawed. Marika spent eons maintaining the Golden Order before finally rebelling against it, suggesting even gods can grow, change, and come to regret their creations. The Dusk-Eyed Queen and Melina connection. Melina, your mysterious companion who guides you through the lands between, has connections to the Gloam-Eyed Queen that the game never explicitly confirms, but heavily implies. Melina mentions her purpose was given to her by her mother at the foot of the Erd Tree, and she can remember a time before she lost her body. If you pursue the Frenzied Flame ending, Melina's sealed eye opens, revealing it to be a duskwood-colored gloam eye identical to descriptions of the Gloam-Eyed Queen. This suggests Melina might be the Queen reborn, reset, or a fragment of her consciousness repurposed by Marika. Her ability to travel to various sites of grace and her intimate knowledge of the Erd Tree's nature support this theory. The fact that she threatens to hunt you down if you choose the Frenzied Flame ending, promising to deliver destined death, shows she retains some connection to that power, even if she doesn't fully remember her origins. The Round Table Hole's dual existence. The Round Table Hold you visit exists in a strange state, separate from the physical version you later discover in Leyndell. The hold you access through grace appears to be a metaphysical copy, a space existing outside normal geography where Tarnished can gather regardless of their location in the lands between. The real physical Round Table Hold in the capital lies in ruins, long abandoned before your arrival. This dual existence suggests the grace-accessed version is maintained by some power, possibly Marika's lingering will or the greater will's influence, to provide a gathering place for Tarnished. When the hold begins burning near the endgame, it's not physical fire but symbolic destruction, representing the collapse of the Tarnished's united purpose. As multiple paths to different endings become available, the burning hold reflects the fragmenting of the Tarnished's mission into competing visions for the world's future. The catacomb's true purpose. The numerous catacombs dotting the lands between aren't random dungeons, but part of an organized system for processing the dead. Each catacomb returns corpses to the Erd Tree through its root system, with the imp statues serving as guardians ensuring only proper burials occur. The treasure and items found in catacombs were buried with the dead as grave goods, offerings meant to accompany souls on their journey back to the Erd Tree. The fact that these offerings include weapons, runes, and valuable items suggests the culture believed the dead would need these things in whatever comes next. Violating these tombs and stealing grave goods is technically a crime against the dead and the Erd Tree's system, making every Tarnished who raids catacombs a grave robber by definition. The watchdogs and other guardians aren't merely obstacles, but are fulfilling their sacred duty to prevent exactly what you're doing. From their perspective, you're not a hero but a criminal desecrating holy burial sites. Like and subscribe, Cozy Nights. The Mending Rune of Perfect our next Order. Cozy adventure. Brother Corin and Goldmask's quest to perfect the Golden Order reveals that the system has fundamental flaws built into it from the beginning. Goldmask's revelation that gods and lords being allowed to be mortal creates the instability leads to creating the Mending Rune of Perfect Order. This rune doesn't fix individual problems but addresses the core issue. Gods shouldn't be subject to mortal whims, emotions, or ambitions. By removing divine beings' capacity for human flaws, the Perfect Order ending creates an eternal system that can never deviate from its perfect state. This sounds ideal until you realize it means removing all free will and agency from the gods, transforming them into unchanging pillars, maintaining an eternal status quo. Goldmask essentially concluded that the Golden Order's problem was that Marika was too human, capable of doubt and rebellion. So the solution is to make gods into impersonal forces of nature rather than conscious entities. The Prince of Death's failed resurrection. The attempt to resurrect Godwyn through an eclipse ceremony at Castle Sol failed, leaving Godwyn in his cursed state as the Prince of Death. This failed ritual has implications across the lands between. The death blight that spreads through the world originates from Godwyn's deathless corpse, his half-death creating a corruption that transforms the nature of death itself. Those who live in death, undead who refuse to return to the Erd Tree, are products of this corruption, existing because Godwyn's state has fundamentally broken the normal cycle. The eclipse ceremony's failure meant Godwyn couldn't be fully restored, but it also prevented him from completely dying, trapping him in the worst of both states. Miquella's attempt to grant Godwyn a true death through this ritual showed his compassion for his half-brother, but its failure meant Godwyn's suffering would continue indefinitely, with his corruption spreading throughout the world's root system. The Outer Gods' influence. Multiple Outer Gods compete for influence over the lands between, each seeking to establish their own age. The Greater Will maintains the current Golden Order through the Elden Ring and Erd Tree. The Outer God of Rot seeks to spread scarlet rot through millennia. The Formless Mother grants blood power to Mog. The Frenzied Flame wants to burn everything to primordial chaos. The Dark Moon appears connected to the Carians and Ranni's plans. These aren't mere powerful beings, but cosmic forces operating on incomprehensible scales, with the lands between serving as contested territory in their eternal conflicts. Understanding this reveals that none of the endings represent true freedom. You're always choosing which outer god gains dominance. Even Ranni's ending, which claims to remove divine influence, actually establishes the Dark Moon's age in the Greater Will's place. The only ending that truly rejects all outer gods is the Frenzied Flame, which destroys everything they might influence. The Lands Between's geographic impossibility. The Lands Between's geography contains impossibilities that suggest the world exists in a twisted or broken state. Underground areas like Siofra River contain full skies and celestial bodies, despite being deep beneath the earth. Farum Azula floats in a storm outside normal space-time. The consecrated snowfield exists impossibly close to volcanic Mount Gelmir. These contradictions might result from the shattering, fundamentally breaking reality, causing space and time to function incorrectly. Or perhaps the lands between never followed normal physical laws, being a constructed reality shaped by divine will rather than natural forces. The Golden Order's influence might have maintained a coherent reality, and its breaking allowed these impossibilities to manifest visibly. The world you explore isn't just politically and socially broken, but fundamentally damaged at the level of physical reality itself. The deathbed companion's role. Fire serves as a deathbed companion, a role that involves providing comfort and sharing in the death of others. This isn't merely emotional support, but a spiritual practice where deathbed companions literally absorb aspects of death from others, taking that burden into themselves. Fear's ultimate goal is to create a mending rune that allows those who live in death to exist peacefully within the Golden Order, rather than being hunted as abominations. Her questline reveals that the Golden Order's enforcement of a specific type of death, returning to the Erd Tree, is arbitrary, and other forms of death existence are possible. By lying with Godwyn's corpse and birthing a rune from that union, Fear creates an alternative. An age where different states of death are accepted rather than forced into a single mold. Her ending represents compassion for those who don't fit the Golden Order's narrow definitions of acceptable existence. The Dragon Lord's lost empire. Dragon Lord Placidusax served as Elden Lord before the age of the Erd Tree, ruling when different gods held power and dragons dominated the lands between. Finding him requires lying down at a specific location in Farum Azula, which transports you backwards in time to when the ruins were whole and Placidusax still occupied them. This temporal displacement reveals that Farum Azula exists partially outside normal time, allowing access to multiple eras simultaneously. Placidusax waits for his god's return, a deity who fled long ago and whose identity remains mysterious. The fact that a dragon served as Elden Lord proves the position isn't limited to humanoid beings, and that the Elden Ring's power has existed through multiple ages under different configurations. Placidusax represents the last remnant of an age that predates everything else in the game. A connection to powers and gods that existed before the Greater Will established the current order. The Celestial Dew's forgiveness. Celestial Dew, found in underground areas, can be used at the Church of Vows to request absolution, resetting NPC aggression and reversing certain questline failures. This item's power suggests it contains water from beyond the lands between, possibly from the same cosmic source as the falling stars. The Church of Vows itself appears dedicated to Radagon and Renala's marriage, with their union representing the joining of opposites, faith and intelligence, Golden Order and Carian royalty. The Church's ability to grant forgiveness through Celestial Dew implies that cosmic forces can overrule earthly conflicts and reset relationships. This mechanic transforms from simple game functionality into lore significance when you realize it suggests redemption and reconciliation are possible through appeals to powers beyond the Golden Order's jurisdiction. Even divine law can be superseded by cosmic intervention.